If you go to a tute, let's send this version. Uh, is this the same version that you got in the group? I can't remember now. Made some slight modifications. Is it the same tute, Pudha? I made some slight modifications. There are differences. Alicia, can you tell? Is it different? Kind of different, no? Yeah, kind of different. I put some additional diagrams. So hold on, I'll put this into the group as well. Sorry about that. I slightly modified it. I'll put it into our chat again. Yeah, sorry about that. I always modify, update everything with time because otherwise we are in the same place now. So I add things that is going to help you understand better, more diagrams, things like that. Okay. The new one is available in the Zoom chat. Okay. Still being uploaded. Okay. Right. So download it at your leisure. Don't rush. No need to rush about it. Right. So some of the gas exchange surfaces you can see here. Oh, sorry, I didn't change it. Can you see my screen? Yes, friend. You can see my screen, right? Yeah. Okay. So some of the diversity of the gas exchange surface in the animal world, you can see, right? We're going to cover these. So in your marine annelids, we have the special respiratory surface, that is their sort of, if you can remember your evolution, right? We learned that they have a unique feature called what? What is the unique feature? They have parapodia. Parapodia are involved in what? Parapodia, locomotion and respiration, right? Can you see they sort of act as external gills, right? So they are a gas exchange surface that is found outside these marine what? Marine what phylum? Marine annelids, right? And so these other some of these let's say marine arthropods have this sort of external gills as well, right? Then your sea star, what is the phylum of the sea star? Can someone tell me? Starfish. What is the phylum? This guy? This one? What is this phylum? Yes, your evolution. Echinodermates, right? Echinodermates. So echinodermates have their, what is their unique feature? Yes, they have a water vascular system. They have a water vascular system, and through that water vascular system, they have these structures called tube feet. Tube feet uh, sort of involved in the gas exchange, right? And this is a special thing that you can see unique to phylum Arthropoda. That is your what? Anybody know? These are called the tracheal system. Tracheal system. So it's like a ventilation system. Have you seen in buildings we have these air ducts, right? Ventilation systems are hulam bata uding and for the ventilation of the interior of the building, right? So these arthropods have this sort of internal ventilation system. So the atmospheric air is delivered directly through these tubes to the body cells. Those are like air tubes, right? Tubes of air that are taking the atmospheric air very close to the cells, right? Very close to the cells. That is called what? Tracheal system. Tracheal system. That is a unique feature of phylum Arthropoda. Unique feature of phylum Arthropoda. Right? So I'll go through these other diagrams that are in the tute while we go through sort of the theory part, right? And we are going to do these questions at the end of the day. Okay, right. Coming back to the resource book. Okay, let's go through what we just saw. So we just learned that simple animals, they don't have a specialized gas exchange system. Right? What are the simple animals that we think? Cnidarians and what? Platyhelminthes, right? Flatworms. So highlight cnidarians and flatworms. They do not have a specialized circulatory system. So highlight who are these animals without a circulatory system. So moving on to the next paragraph, in large animals, body complexity and energy requirement is high and bulk of the cells are in the body lack immediate access to the external environment. So because the animal is big and more complex, they have a large number of cells and most of the cells are inside of the animal, right? What we call as the area to volume ratio of the animal, AV, right? So their area is low, the body volume is high. So this overall ratio is very low in complex animals, right? The body volume is high, surface area is low. So this is a problem for gas exchange if we are going to stay exchanging gases through the body surface. That's why specialized circulatory systems evolved, right? Right? Okay. So hence gas exchange through the body surface is not adequate. As a result, specialized surfaces are referred to as the respiratory surface evolved. Right? So if anybody asks you in the paper, right, why specialized respiratory surfaces evolved, what do you have to say? Why specialized respiratory surface evolved? What are the points that you have to say? Those are similar to the points that we encountered as the reasons why animals got a circulatory system as well. What are the reasons? Body complexity and energy requirement is high. You can put numbers. First reason, body complexity and energy requirement is high. Bulk of the cells in the body lack immediate access to the external environment, right? So those are the three reasons, or three or two reasons you can take, right? And also you can say gas exchange through the body surface is not adequate to fulfill their energy requirements. So in the structured essay paper, they can ask you this, right? Why do large animals evolve specialized respiratory structures? Those are the reasons. Okay. So next paragraph, with the increase in size, the surface area to volume ratio decreases, A over V, right? But now what is the problem? The animal is now complex. So he requires a lot of energy, to produce that energy. What do you need? You need to do cellular respiration. You need to do cellular respiration. So when cellular respiration is happening, what is the byproduct? If you are doing, right, CO2 is being evolved. This CO2 has to be released to the outside and oxygen has to be taken in, right? So to keep the animal living, we need to get a nice, efficient circulatory system, right? So what are the, yes. So diverse respiratory structures with a large surface area with folding and branching evolved, right? Actually, if our surface area of our lungs was all the small inner surface area of our lungs was sort of, let's say, stitched together into one big, let's say, a fabric, if we take the lung interior of our lungs, it will be able to cover like a football field. That's how much surface area that we have with the foldings inside of our lungs, right? So I'll show you that with the software. Um, Examples are gills, trachea, and lungs, right? Right. So you can classify gas exchange surfaces into two categories as what? What are the two categories that we can classify? Respiratory surface. This, according to you have external projections. Please classify, or you can write down gas exchange surfaces. You can write down in the tute or in I mean, with a pencil on the resource book, you can classify like in a small letters. What are the two types of gas exchange surfaces? You have inside, right? Sorry, your body surface is going to sort of curve inside into your body. Surface invaginations. Surface invaginations. What is the other thing? Your external body surface is going to project out, right? External body surface is going to project out. So those are called external projections. Right? External surface imaginations and external projections. Right? Give me some examples for, let's say, external projections. What are the examples? Things, the body surface is pushed to the outside. As I told you, external gills, right? The gills in your parapodia, right? Parapodia and some other marine annelids also have gills that are the body surface that is curved and folded outside of the body, gills. What are surface invaginations? Your tracheal system that I just showed you, tracheal system. Or you can just say trachea. Trachea system and lungs, right? Lungs are located inside your body. Okay. Understand? Gas exchange surfaces. So you can say respiratory structures even. There are external projections and surface invaginations. These are the examples. So actually, your gills, to be more specific, these are what? These are external gills, okay? Here, external imaginations are external gills. There are two types of gills as external. Here you can take internal gills. Your fish, right? Uh, I mean, class of Stichthies, Chondrichthies, so you get the internal gills, right? And tracheal systems are found only in arthropods. And also there are some surface invaginations such as book lungs, right? Book lungs, those are located inside the body. External projections, I mean, skin, you can still take moist skin. It has to be wet, right? I'll tell you why it has to be moist, right? Wet skin. Okay, so the example. So page 200, you have the features, right? So to be a nice respiratory surface, there are 4 features of that respiratory surface that should be fulfilled, right? These are questioned in the structure essay paper. So try to remember the key terms, okay? It must be permeable and wet so that the gases can pass through by dissolving, right? So your gases won't just diffuse, right? It's better if we can dissolve them and diffuse. Then the efficiency is high. So what are the keywords? Permeable and wet. So if you have written, they ask you what are the characteristics of the respiratory surface. If you are missing those words, no marks. Get it? Then it must be thin because diffusion is only efficient over short distances. Diffusion is a passive process. Are we giving energy for diffusion? No. It happens automatically. Because it's a passive process, it happens only over a small distance. Right? Free දෙන දෙයක්, right? නොමිලේ වෙන වැඩ වැඩි දෙලා කරන්න අමාරු. Right? So it is only going to be efficient over very short distance. If we give some money, right? What is the equivalent of money in a cell? Energy, ATP, right? So if we pay a transporter to take this to another level, another location, then maybe it will go. But are we paying anything? No. It's a free process, passive process. So it is only go a short distance. It should possess a large surface area to allow sufficient volume of gases to be exchanged, right, according to other organisms' need. So, for example, humans, we are very active, right? Our brain consumes a lot of calories, our heart consumes a lot of calories, we have a lot of skeletal muscles, right? We require a lot of energy. So, our energy demand is high, therefore, our oxygen demand is high. We need to have a very large surface area. But do we have a very large lungs? Right? Compared to our body, our lungs are in sort of our thoracic cage, right? In a limited area. But our lungs have evolved to be very nice gas exchangers. So the keyword there is third point, large surface area and sufficient volume of gases, right? You have to say not a large volume, it has to be sufficient, right? It should possess a good blood supply, maintain a steep diffusion gradient, right? So if we draw what happens, so you have taken this down, right? The classification of the respiratory surfaces. Students who just joined, the recording will be available. So just go with the sort of the theory. So follow the resource book and the tut is available in the chat. So you can download it as a PDF. Okay. So your gas exchange surface, if you go to where actually the gas exchange happens, it's called the alveoli, It's a sack of air. අපි කියනවා සිංහලෙන් ගර්තයක්. Okay? Right? So this is full of air, atmospheric air. Going very close to him is a blood capillary. Not just a blood vessel, it's a blood capillary. What does it have? It has this sort of biconvex red blood cells. Those carry hemoglobin that are actually are sort of empty lorries, right? They are like empty lorries. They are coming to take load oxygen, right? And also they are bringing some carbon dioxide as well, right? So inside our gas exchange, the oxygen concentration, let's say the concentration, actually it's partial pressure, it's high here. Inside your blood vessel, the O2 concentration is low. So nicely, there must be a nice gradient, right? It should come down inside the blood, like along a slope, right? What do you mean by a gradient? It's like a slope, right? Here the concentration is high, it's low, so easily the oxygen comes into the blood. Okay? So nice steep gradient must be maintained. But imagine this blood flow is not happening properly. The blood is not flowing properly. Then sort of the blood is echo. It's either stopped or it's going very slowly. What is going to happen? This concentration of oxygen is going to it's going to be a small difference in concentration, right? Then what is going to happen? The slope, the gradient is going to be reduced. Then the oxygen doesn't come into blood as easily. That's why so that's why why we need to have a nice good blood supply with a nice flow rate in order to have good gas exchange. The tute is can't you see it's up in the chat. I think you can still go up to the chat and see, right? Or because you just joined, you can't. Can someone put it in the chat again, please? No, wait, I'll say. It's fine. Okay, it's sending. You will be able to down. Okay, all right. So moving on, let's move on to the human respiratory system. Any questions up till now? No, right? Any questions? Let's move on to the human respiratory system. Okay, I'll start screen share so you can have a. Yeah, we have a trachea. That I'll show you the trachea, right? So we are calling it the tracheal system? It is because it's sort of similar to our tracheal structure, right? Can you see my screen? It's not sharing. Hold on. Okay. Can you see my screen? Right. Respiratory system. We'll go with the nice order, right? So this is a simplified diagram, right? From the upper respiratory systems and to the level of the lungs, right? It's all the other irrelevant systems, blood circulatory, digestive, everything else has been removed, right? So that you can understand the anatomy. So if you are a healthy person, you are supposed to be breathing from where? Husma ganne kohende? If you are a healthy person, from where are you breathing? Here. Through your nares. We call it nares, the openings in your nose, right? You are supposed to be breathing from those. Why? Because inside your nose, there are a lot of modifications that are necessary to keep your respiratory system healthy, right? Imagine you are breathing cold air, right? A lot of cold air that is going to sort of stimulate other in if it that cold air goes to the level of your throat, that coldness is going to be a problem. It's going to make muscles contract, right? Make muscles contract. So that is going to make breathing difficult, right? That is going to happen when that cold air goes down into the lungs as well. So your nose has a blood supply to warm the air that you are breathing, warm it up, rub curl. And inside, I don't think this has. Actually, the inside of your nose is sort of very complicated. That is to have some cavities so that this warming process can take place, right? Okay. And inside there are hairs. You can't see the hairs in the software, right? Those hairs help in sort of filtration, right? If you are breathing in a lot of dust, solid particles, maybe insects, so many things are there in your breathing, or the air that we breathe. So they are filtered by the hairs, right? Then that is what happens in the nose, right? Uh, then the air moves on. Sorry, the breathed air. I'll remove this. These are called sinuses. You don't need those, right? So this is the nasal cavity. So from that, can you see? I'll remove some of these bones as well, right? Can you see? This is your nasal cavity, and then it moves on to a common area. So this is your mouth, no? So that is your back of your mouth. Can you see? If you look at the hanging structure, what do we call it? The alveola, or kate ellena kalla තියෙන, right? So then we come to a common area for the respiratory breathing air and the food that we eat. That is called the pharynx, right? It actually has three parts called the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx, right? But you don't need that. Just remember it is the pharynx, which is the common area for the respiratory system and the digestive system, right? So I'll remove some of these cartilage kind of things. Do you know what cartilage this is? This one? If you are a sort of a male, you can even feel, but in females, you can also feel it. What is it? Anybody? Anybody know what this structure is? White color? Wow, no. Can you read? Yes. It's called the thyroid cartilage, right? So the thyroid cartilage has this sort of a pointed part, especially more sort of prominent in males. I call Adam's apple, right? It's a secondary feature, sexual feature, right? So thyroid cartilage actually provides some protection to the upper part of the respiratory system. If I remove it, now this is the beginning of our proper respiratory system. The common area is now over, right? So there are other cartilages called this other cartilage, right? So this is the trachea, right? From this onwards, we call this tube. Can you see? This is our trachea. I'll remove this, right? Can you see? This is our trachea. So that is the proper windpipe. We call it the windpipe, right? In common, I mean, in usual, when we are talking normally, we call it the windpipe, right? So this is a bone. This is a floating bone, right? Called the hyoid bone. This bone actually breaks when you are being hanged by the neck. එල්ලලා මරද්දි මේ bone එක crack වෙනවා. Right? It's a floating bone, hyoid bone. No, don't need that. Right? If we take a look inside at this place, you can see some interesting things. Right? You can see some interesting things. Right? So this is what? Anybody? What is this other tube that is going behind? This? You know your names yet, so don't be sort of shy to send messages. Don't send me private messages, okay? Because I only look at the main chat, right? Other than Alicia, yeah. So esophagus is that is your esophagus, right? That's where the food goes into the stomach. It is connected into the stomach, so the stomach you can't see. So it goes down here, right? Here there's supposed to be the stomach, right? So what I want to show you is there's this thing called the epiglottis, right? Epiglottis. That is very, very important. Can you see this? It's like a leaf. Epiglottis. That is very important to your survival, right? You are kept alive by the epiglottis. We'll come to that, right? And now, if we look from above, I'll remove some of these things. This is our opening of the trachea, right? Opening of the trachea. So that is where our sort of the respiratory system properly starts, right? So the common area is open. There's a nice structure here called the vocal cords. Can you see some two white strings? Those are your vocal cords. That's how we produce sound, what we call as what? Phonation, right? So when we are talking, as I am doing now, our our talking has two parts. As production of sound, phonation, and vocalization. We have to make a sound, then we have to pronounce words using our mouth. So that sound production happens in the vocal cords of the larynx. Vocalization is done by what parts? Anyone? How are we pronouncing the words? What are the things that we use to pronounce words as I'm talking right now? What are the things that I use to pronounce? Okay. Yeah, I can use a jaw. Soft things, be more specific, the lips, tongue, right? Those are the things that we use to pronounce the words. But the sound comes from this vocal cords. Can we talk when you're breathing in? Can we talk when you're breathing in? I'm talking when I'm breathing out. So when you are breathing out, using that gas, you can make a sound. That is what happens in this vocal cords, right? Okay, moving down. This is our trachea, the windpipe. The trachea is supported by a series of cartilage rings. Can you see? These are cartilage. I hope you remember how are cartilage formed, right? Right? It's a type of connective tissue. I hope you remember. Go back and read about cartilage. So there are cartilage rings that is going to provide support to this trachea, right? And inside the chest, the trachea is going to divide into two main branches because why? We have two lungs, right? So this is called the right, what? Bronchus, right? This goes to the right lung. We have two lungs, right? This is called the left bronchus. It goes to the left lung. And you can see this is the inner surface of the lung. So these are openings for the blood vessels to go inside, right? Blood vessels has to go inside. What are the blood vessels going into the lungs? Anyone? What are the blood vessels going in and coming out of the lungs? Quick revision. What are the blood vessels? It is the word that we use to describe our anything related to the lungs. Yes. What are the blood vessels going and coming from the lungs? Anyone? You know what? Going to the lungs, we have what? Pulmonary artery. One for each lung, right? Two pulmonary arteries. And coming from the lungs, what do we have? Pulmonary veins. Yes. So those are connected. Can you see the holes that are in the lungs for these blood vessels? Okay. All right. Then this purple color, yes, very good. This purple color is the outermost covering, right, of the lungs, right? It's like a, let's say the skin of the lungs. Imagine the lungs has a skin. It's called the pleura, specifically the visceral pleura, right? That is sort of the I mean, it is nicely stuck on the surface of the lungs. That is called the visceral pleura. If we remove it, now we can see the naked lung. It's like a naked lung without any clothes. This is a naked lung, right? So which lung is bigger? Can you just compare these two lungs and tell me which lung is bigger, left or right? Yes, which lung is bigger? Yes, quickly tell which lung is bigger. You can't see from the behind. Behind looks the kind of the same, but inside the left lung there's a small, so not a small, big cavity, right? That is to accommodate the heart, right? Therefore, the right lung is bigger. Therefore, the right lung we consider to have three main parts, right? What are they? Three lobes. We say the lung or the right lung can be divided into three lobes. Can you see these lines? There's one line here and there's another line here that is dividing the lung into three parts. Can you see? Those are the lung lobes. How many lobes does the right lung have? Three. How many lobes does the left lung have? Can you see? There's only one line, no? Right? For your level, that is enough. Right? Remembering the right lung has three lobes and the left lung has two lobes, that is enough. But your lobes can be divided into other sections, segments, right? Those are, if you are going to follow maybe human biology or even medicine, you are going to learn over those other segments. Okay. So if we take a look inside one of these lobes, you can see how the main bronchus branches into what? Bronchioles, right? That are going to end in what? What is the ending of this tube system? What is at the end of this tube system? What is at the end? These structures. Can you see these structures? It's like a bunch of grapes. Yes, alveoli. Can you see? It's like a bunch of grapes, right? So this one has been has it's a cross section. It has been cut, right? So you can see the inside. Can you see? It has a nice rich blood supply, right? Arteries and veins, and these are blood capillaries that are surrounding the alveoli, right? So these are the very end of the tube system, right? Those are called terminal bronchioles, right? So these are our respiratory surfaces, the alveoli, right? If we go even further to look at them even closer, you can see it's like this. If we take a cross section, inside of an alveoli is like this. Can anyone tell me what are these cells, right? What is this? What are these cells that are making the wall of the alveoli? Anyone? Anyone? Tissues? No, epithelial cells. Come on. Anyone? What is the cell type? Or I'll give another hint. What is the epithelial cell type forming the wall of the... Okay, epithelial cells means you're saying that is not a very specific answer. I need a specific, what is the type of epithelial cells that are forming the wall of this alveoli? Go back and check what are the types of epithelial cells you learned. Turn your resource book. New students, what do you think? Anyone? You can put message in the chat, right? Everyone has that ability here. So okay. Simple squamous. Simple squamous. Because why? They are, can you see, they are very flat, right? They are specialized for exchange of substances. Diffusion is easy because they are very thin, a single layer, right? And there are some other cells like this one, right? That is, I'll explain the function. There are white blood cells such as a macrophages, right? Those are for protection, right? Those are for protection. And this is an artery that is bringing blood towards the alveoli. Sorry, very sorry. This is the artery, right? Why do I say this is the artery? The blue one is the artery, right? Because what kind of blood is being brought to the lung? මොන වගේ blood the lung එකට ගේන්නේ? Is it oxygen rich blood or deoxygenated blood? Oxygen poor blood is being brought to the lung. So this is the artery. The blue one is the artery because it is carrying blue deoxygenated blood. We draw it in the blue color. Yes. And after the blood has taken oxygen from the alveoli, it is become oxygenated. So what is being taken away from the lung? Nice red color oxygenated blood. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? This. Come to your resource books. Then come to your resource books. Read the human respiratory system. I'll quickly go through it. You have to highlight the important things. It consists of the nostrils, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, and a branching duct system from the trachea to bronchi, one leading into each lung, and the smaller bronchioles, which finally end in air sacs called alveoli. The bronchioles and alveoli are contained within the paired cone-shaped lungs located in the thoracic cavity, right? So the bronchioles and alveoli we consider to be inside the chest. The two lungs differ in slightly in shape and size. The left lung is slightly smaller than the right because the apex of the heart is slightly to the left of the median plane. Our heart is it like here in the middle? No, it is slightly to the left because not the entire heart. What is it? The edge of the heart, what we call as the apex. The left ventricle is sort of here, no? Therefore, some of the space is taken from the left lung. Left lung has 2 lobes and the right lung has 3 lobes. Each lung is surrounded by 2 membranes, right? I told you the lung has like it has a skin, and imagine it is wearing a coat outside, right? It has a skin and it's wearing a coat from the outside. So what is its skin called? The visceral pleura that adheres to the outer surface of the lungs. It's like our skin. Can we take off our skin? I mean, we can, but we can't normally we can't remove our skin, right? So the visceral pleura is like very not tightly, but it's adhered to the surface of the lung, right? We can't remove it. But what about the other covering? That is called the parietal pleura. Okay, this parietal pleura is sort of like a coat that we wear outside the lungs that we can remove. I'll show you this visceral and parietal pleura again. Uh, Between these 2 membranes, there's a thin fluid-filled space. Okay, let's read about the breathing. Air enters the respiratory system through the nostrils. In the nasal cavity, air is filtered by hairs, warmed and humidified as it travels through the spaces in the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity leads into the pharynx, which is a common passage for both air and food. I showed you this, right? That means the air passage and the food passage will cross each other. Yeah, for the very above at our throat level, our food and air are getting. I mean, they are in the same path. All right. During swallowing, the larynx moves upwards, which allows the epiglottis. I showed you the epiglottis, right? It's like that leaf, right? So the epiglottis close the opening of the larynx, called the glottis, right? It's like this. I'll erase this. I hope you can remember. Right? So from the nasal cavity, we get one opening, and from the mouth, we get another tube. And this is the common part, right? Here we have the trachea, and here we have the sort of the muscular tube that is the esophagus, right? This is the pharynx now. This is the pharynx. What did I show you here? There's this sort of like a leaf-like structure. That is what? That is the epiglottis. So that is the epiglottis. There is another, what do you mean by epi? Sort of like outside, right? Like outer to that sort of meaning, right? So this is your what? This tube, this one? It's your larynx. Sorry, very sorry. It's not here. It's your, what is it? What is this tube? This is your trachea, no? This is your trachea. So the beginning of the trachea or the opening of the trachea is called what? The glottis. Right? This is your epiglottis. That is sort of above the glottis. This is your glottis. So what is going to happen when you are swallowing food? Right? On where you have eaten like some rice, and that rice is coming this way. Which path should it go? This way, no? Into the esophagus. It should go in the esophagus. So what is going to happen is this entire trachea is going to rise upwards like this. What is going to happen? The glottis will be closed by the epiglottis like this. So the food will go in the esophagus, not into your lungs. If you inhale food, if you breathe in food, is it a good thing? That is called an aspiration, right? You have swallowed food into your trachea, into the respiratory system. That is very bad. If it gets stuck here, you can't breathe. And breathe means you can't get oxygen. So you're going to die. If someone does the Heimlich maneuver and removes that food, or even if it's very serious, you have to maybe suck it out, right? Go to the hospital and suck it out. So that is a protective mechanism. Okay. This allows the food to go down the esophagus, come to the resource, to the stomach. The rest of this time, the glottis is open so that the air can move from the pharynx through the larynx into the trachea. When you're not eating, this whole thing is open. So the air can go from the nose, pharynx into the trachea. In the larynx, vocal cords help to produce sound when expired air rushes across the stretched or tense vocal cords, causing them to vibrate, right? So how do you make a high-pitched sound? People who have done music, how do you make a high-pitched sound? Right? Tensing your vocal cords. When you relax them, you can make like a very deep sound, right? Vocal cords help produce sound when expired air rushes across the stretched or tense vocal cords, causing them to vibrate. Both the walls of the larynx and the trachea are strengthened by cartilage that help to keep these airways open, right? They have to be always kept open, otherwise air will not go through them. The air passes from the trachea into the two bronchi that lead into each lung. Within the lungs, the air passes through smaller and smaller branches of the bronchi called bronchioles. Right. The epithelium found in major branches of this respiratory tract has cilia and a thin film of mucus. Right? This mucus helps to trap dust and other particulate contaminants in the inhaled air. Then the beating of the cilia moves this mucus upwards towards the pharynx, where it will be swallowed by the esophagus. This process is called the mucus escalator. Highlight mucus escalator, keyword, right? Very, very important. Mucus escalator. Moving on, next page. At the tips of the tiniest bronchioles, you have, I'll explain this again, okay? There's a large number of small air sacs clustered together. I just showed you, right? It's like a bunch of grapes. These air sacs are called alveoli, where the gas exchange have occurs. The walls of the alveoli are made of a single layer of flattened epithelial cells, right? What are the epithelial cells? You can write down using a pencil there. Simple, squamous epithelium. Uh, that lacks cilia. So inside the alveoli, you don't have cilia. Okay, this sort of you know cilia, right? You don't have cilia inside the alveoli. I just showed you alveoli. The interior of the alveoli is coated by a thin film of fluid. You saw this when I showed you alveoli, but I didn't tell you because you don't know what that is, right? So why do we have this thin film of fluid? We just talked about the features of a nice respiratory surface. It has to be moist. It has to be wet, right? So that the gases can diffuse by dissolving, right? The gases can diffuse by dissolving. So that's why there's a thin film of fluid. But this creates a problem, right? Having this thin film of fluid creates a problem. Okay. Moving on. Each alveolus is also surrounded by a network of capillaries. Oxygen in the air that enters the alveoli dissolves in the thin film of moist film, diffuses rapidly across the thin epithelium into the capillaries. Meanwhile, a diffusion of CO2 from the capillaries into the alveoli. Since there are no cilia, there are white blood cells to engulf the foreign particles. Give me another name. These white blood cells. They are a type of white blood cell, but that we can't see in our blood circulatory system. We can't see this kind of white blood cells in our blood, but they are a type of white blood cell. We call them alveolar. Yes, macrophages. No. They are a type of white blood cell. They can eat. They can eat bacteria that you breathe. Right? There are so many bacteria that you breathe in. They can eat them. What do you call this eating process? Anyone? What do you call this process of eating? A cell eating another cell? It could be a cell or something other outside the cell. These are very basic things that you learn in cellular basis. No? Any- Very good. Phagocytosis. Phagocytosis. So these macrophages are involved in this phagocytosis. Okay? Phagocytosis. Very good. So, white blood cells, you can write down, those are called alveolar macrophages. Alveoli are also coated with a surfactant that reduces the surface tension, thereby preventing the collapse of alveoli due to the high surface tension. So, in your physics, in the final sort of the properties of matter lesson, I think, the last lesson, no, you will learn about a property called surface tension. And you will be doing questions about the surface tension in the lungs. Because we have such a large surface area by the alveoli, there's a large surface tension. I can't remember the equation, but when the surface increases, this surface tension force increases. Right? Remember this when you're doing those equations in physics. So, because we have this thin film of fluid and it is spread over a large number of alveoli, it has a large surface, sorry, it has a large surface tension. Because of that surface tension, these alveoli, can they be like nice grapes, like full grapes? No, it's going to shrink them, right? Pull them, like close them. To prevent that from happening, there's a chemical called a surfactant that its function is to reduce the surface tension so that the alveoli remain open. Okay. Any questions? So in your page 202, you have the basic diagram that you need to understand, right? Any questions? I'll go back to the tute and I'll screen share again. So I want to show you this. Yeah. No, before that, this is the real one, right? What is the epithelium? This is, you have to remember what is the respiratory epithelium everywhere except in the alveoli. Pseudostratified, ciliated, columnar epithelium is the epithelium you have, right? You can see the cilia, right? Can you see the cilia? So what is the process done by these cilia? It's called the mucus escalator, right? There are cells called, I'll show you. Can you see this? This is the mucus. This yellow and this pink, all those is mucus that is secreted by this man, mucus gland. That mucus is like a glue, no? So when you are breathing in dirt, bacteria, whatever, that is going to get stuck into this mucus, which is like a glue. And the cilia is able to move this mucus in one direction. What is the direction? Upwards. Upwards. Upwards means what? Towards your pharynx, in the throat. In the throat, what is going to happen? That dirt, that mucus, the dust, bacteria, everything is going to be swallowed into your esophagus. It is going to go into your stomach. Why? But the stomach is a dangerous place for these bacteria. Why? Can many bacteria live in the stomach? Is stomach a nice place? No. It has a high acidity, about pH 2, right? pH is very low. HCl. HCl can kill most of these bacteria. So that is the main purpose of this mucus and the cilia. Okay. So, and this is sort of a cross section. You can go through this in your leisure time. What I told you, this is the, you can label this, right? Please label this. What is this? What is this structure? Anyone? What is the structure? I just drew the arrow. Mhm. It's the epiglottis. This is the glottis. This is the glottis. This leaf-like structure is the epiglottis. Okay. Right. And this is a bit about those pleura, right? Listen carefully. There are two layers of pleura. What are they? The visceral pleura and the parietal pleura. What did I tell about the visceral pleura? It is like the skin of the lungs. Can you see the inner layer? There's two layers. Can you see? This inner layer is the visceral pleura. It is like the skin of the lung. There's an outer layer that I told you as the coat over the lungs that are like stuck to the thoracic cavity, right? So we have a chest wall composed of the ribs and the muscles. So this parietal pleura is stuck to the inside of that chest wall, and there is a gap. That gap is filled with a fluid. You don't need to know the name. That is called the pleural fluid. There's a fluid, pleural fluid. Okay. Any questions? Others? Think, right, to quickly write down answers for this structured essay quickly. 30 seconds. Right, okay. Done. What are the answers other than a large surface area? What are the other things? You have other three more, right? Here, it has to be thin because diffusion is over only efficient over short distance. You have to be give complete answers. It has to be permeable, low wet, so that gases can pass through by dissolving. Or you can say it should possess a good blood supply, or you to maintain a steep diffusion gradient. Those are the things you have to say. Okay. Anything I think we can't yet do. Okay, moving on. Any question? Fine. Moving on. So that is the anatomy that is completed. Now we have to move on to some mechanics of the respiratory system. The mechanism of ventilation. This is an essay topic. As you have seen, it has been questioned, right? It's an essay topic. So, mechanism of ventilation, you have to be able to describe it in a nice, organized way. Otherwise, you're going to miss points. Okay. So, the definition is that is in the second one. So, ventilation of lungs is necessary to maintain high oxygen and low carbon dioxide concentrations. Then there comes the definition. Ventilation is accomplished by breathing, which is the alternating movement of air in, that is the inhalation, in and out of, that is exit, exhalation of the exhalation out of the lungs. Okay, that is the definition of what is breathing, right? What is the breathing? Alternating movement of air in and out of the lungs. Okay. Humans employ what is referred to as negative pressure breathing, where air is pulled rather than pushed into the lungs. Right? It's like a syringe. Our lungs are like a syringe. We are pulling the air. We are sucking air into our lungs by doing what? It's now again like gas laws in your chemistry. What is the equation? A1 V1, not K1 V1, no? What is the equation? When volume pressure decreases, what is the equation between volume and pressure? Uh, P1, no? P1 V1. Yes, sorry. P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2, right? What is this? Charles law or something? I can't remember. What law is it? Boyle's law or something? I can't remember. So what we do is we need to what? In order to pull air, suck air, what do we need to do? We need to reduce the pressure. To reduce the pressure, what are we going to do? We're going to increase the volume. That's what we are going to do. We are going to increase the size of our thoracic cavity. Together with that, we are going to increase the size of the lungs. Therefore, the volume will increase, the pressure will decrease compared to the outer atmospheric air. Then the atmospheric air will rush, be pulled into our lungs. Negative pressure breathing. Keyword highlighted, negative pressure breathing. Inhalation is an active process. Right? Contraction of rib muscles and intercostal muscles and the diaphragm, which is a sheet of skeletal muscle that forms the bottom of the thoracic cavity, leads to the expansion of the thoracic cavity. I'll show this is a nice animation. So just let's read it. The resource book can get some idea. Which leads to the expansion of the thoracic cavity, thereby increasing its volume. The visceral and parietal pleura, I told you, right? Visceral is the skin. The parietal is sort of like the next layer, the coat. Surrounding the lungs stick together due to the surface tension of the fluid between these two membranes. Right? There's a fluid between the two membranes. I gave it a name. You don't need to know. It's called the pleural fluid. It has surface tension because it's kind of mainly water, right? You know, water has high surface tension, right? Because of the hydrogen bonding. And because of this fluid layer, imagine that to the two layers, they have to nicely smooth slide past each other. They are not stuck together. They have to, when the chest expands, the lungs also side to side, they slide past each other. So it's like maybe like an oil between them, right? So that you can nicely pass between them, right? So when you have, so this, I'll give you some, tell something extra, right? So this pleural fluid that is between the two layers of the lung, they can get infections, right? Infection that is called pleuritis. So when you get an infection, it's called pleuritis. It can be inflamed, right? Bacteria can get in. Then what's going to happen is we can, if you put a stethoscope, you can hear there's like a rub. There's like what we call as a pleural rub, right? It's called a pleural rub. That's because the two visceral and the parietal pleura are rubbing between each other. That is because of this infection, right? So the nice, smooth, um, slipping like oil again, listen action is being lost in such an infection. So you using a stethoscope, you can hear that, right? So that is something additional. Hence, as the volume of the thoracic cavity increases, what is thoracic cavity? Your chest cavity, right? Your rib cage. Here you have a bone called the sternum, right? This whole outer layer is the thoracic cavity. Inside you have the lungs. So when the volume of the thoracic cavity increases, the lungs also increase its volume. Pressure of the lungs decreases compared to the atmospheric air. Atmospheric air rushes in. What is the keyword you have to say? There is a pressure gradient between the atmosphere and the lungs. Whenever you are writing an essay on the mechanism of ventilation, keyword, pressure gradient. Air flows from high pressure in the atmosphere to low pressure in the lungs. This is inhalation. During exhalation, which is usually a passive process, the rib muscles and the diaphragm relax. What do you mean by passive? It does not require energy. It just happens by itself. Doesn't require any energy, right? So when you are like normally breathing out, so as I'm right, if you're just sleeping or sitting down, resting, you are doing what we call as quiet inspiration. Quiet. You are doing what we call as quiet inspiration or quiet inhalation and exhalation. Quiet. You can't hear it. It's happening in the background. Right? It's very small and a background process. Right? Quiet. So this quiet exhalation or breathing out, it doesn't need any energy. It is like because our thoracic cavity and the lungs are elastic, right? It's like a balloon. To to blow it up, we need energy, but it will come back to its normal size by the elastic nature. So the lungs are like that too, right? So to combat or to deflate, it doesn't need any energy. It's a passive process. Okay. Um, as a result, the pressure inside the lungs increase, right? So according to that law, when the when the volume decreases, pressure increases related to the atmospheric air. So the air inside the lungs goes out into the atmosphere. This is exhalation. So when a man is at rest, right, sleeping, sitting down, resting, right, the rib muscles and the diaphragm is enough for breathing, right? However, depending on the activity level, additional muscles may be used to aid deep breathing, such as the muscles of the neck, back, and chest. These are what additional muscles you need to what to do deep breathing, right? Deep breathing. Okay. These are muscles of the neck, back, and chest. So try to take a massive deep breath, right? What automatically happens? Your neck muscles you can immediately see, right, working. And your back muscles, you're like, right? Like that. And the chest muscles, you have these sort of muscles here called pectoral muscles. Those are again working, right? Okay. So these muscles help to increase the volume of the chest further. Right. I'll show you a little animation so you can understand the mechanism of breathing. So we are going to breathe in. You're going to see from the side, right? So these are the muscles that you need to do quiet respiration. Can you see? These are called intercostal muscles between your ribs. Intercostal muscles. Can you see? These are your ribs now. These are your ribs. In between your ribs, you have these intercostal muscles. And we have like a dome shape, like a sheet of muscle that we call the, yes, what is this big muscle? Anyone? Big sheet of muscle, dome of muscle? Anyone? Come on. Yes. What is that sheet of muscle? This is the diaphragm, right? The diaphragm. So that is, those are the two muscle groups that we need to do the quiet respiration, to breathe normally. The intercostals and the diaphragm, right? So what is going to happen is, so this is the normal state, imagine. Now we are going to breathe in. Can you see the ribs are coming out? Ribs are coming out. Can you see that? Now it's coming back. Now focus on the diaphragm. Can you see the diaphragm? It's getting flat. Can you see the diaphragm is getting flat? Now we are going to breathe out again, and the diaphragm is going curved again. I will look at it from this. Let's remove these cartilages. We can't. Right? Look at the diaphragm again. You will going to see it's coming down. It's getting flattened, and now it is going back. If you focus here, can you see? It's getting flat and getting curved again. Getting flat, getting curved, getting flat, getting curved. Breathing in and out. Okay. Is that clear? How the mechanism of ventilation, how we breathe in and out, inhalation and exhalation. Yes. Okay. Okay. Moving on. Not really adaptations. They will. The question won't be asked like that. What are the muscles involved in quiet breathing? They can ask. What are the muscles involved in quiet breathing? Then the diaphragm is the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. What additional muscles are involved when you are like doing forceful breathing? What do they say? Deep breathing. What are the additional muscles? Your neck, back, and chest. Okay. So now we have studied the anatomy, the structure, and then also a little bit of mechanics, right? How exchange of gases happen. How are we taking gas inside and how are we removing or pushing the gas out, right? So now let's compare. So earlier, if you can remember, we learned about um, several things that should be there in a proper gas exchange service. Now let's see if our human respiratory system has those features, right? So our lungs are efficient respiratory surface, page 204, because alveoli has a large surface area. There's many alveoli and also they are nicely packed together to have a large surface area. Alveoli and capillary walls are lined by simple squamous epithelium, which reduces the distance the gases need to travel. So thin, no? Because of the simple squamous. If it was a stratified squamous, then have several layers, no? But this is simple squamous, so no problem. Very only a single cell layer to go through. Diffusion is efficient. Alveoli surface is moist, right? Because of what? A thin fluid layer, no? To dissolve the respiratory gases for diffusion. So you know that. So again, the moist or wet, that feature is also there, right? Checked. Alveoli are highly vascularized. What do you mean by vascularized? It has a good blood supply, which enables the maintenance of a steep diffusion gradient of respiratory gases. Right? So all the features that should be there in a proper respiratory surface, you can see in the human respiratory surface, our lungs. Okay. Then quickly we'll go through page 205. This is something you know, right? From your early, uh, from even from your O levels, right? Something you know. I already drew, right? Our gas exchange happens in two places, right? Gas exchange happens in two places. Gas exchange happens in two places in our. We actually have two types of respiration. What are the two types of respiration we have? We have internal respiration and external respiration. Where does the external respiration happen? In the lungs. Where does the internal respiration happen? In the body tissues. Whether it's a muscle tissue, whether it's your lungs, right? Whether it's your brain, wherever your heart, wherever you need oxygen, that's where internal gas exchange or internal respiration happens. Okay, those two you need to know. That is the basic idea, right? So let's read through the page 204, gas exchange of gases between air and blood and tissues. Those are the two places. Yes. So we need to keep this flow of gases continuously, right? Because we are not stopping the metabolic activities. No. Are we stopping metabolic activities at any given moment? No. We are always doing metabolic work. So we need a continuous cycle of oxygen and carbon dioxide removal. Giving oxygen, removing carbon dioxide. Giving oxygen, removing carbon dioxide. It has to continuously happen. It requires the transport of oxygen from the lungs to the blood and movement of CO2 from blood to the blood and movement of oxygen from blood to the tissues and CO2 from tissues to the blood. Okay, basic things you know, right? Diffusion of oxygen and CO2 requires partial pressure gradients between alveolar air in the lungs and blood and tissues in internal respiration. Everything happens according to a diffusion gradient, right? Partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of CO2. These are the two things that are going to determine what way we are going to, these gases are going to travel. In your lungs, in the alveoli, the oxygen concentration is high, and in the blood, the oxygen concentration is low. So in the lungs, oxygen are going to come into your blood. Right? When it comes to tissues, in the tissues, the oxygen concentration is low, but in the blood, oxygen concentration is high. So from the blood to the tissues, oxygen is going to come out. Okay, let's read page 205. During inhalation, the fresh air mixes with stale air in the lungs. This mixture in the lungs has a higher partial pressure of oxygen, PO2, and a lower partial pressure of carbon dioxide because we just breathed in, right? So in your atmospheric air, about 23% is oxygen, no? Right? 23% is oxygen, as I can remember. CO2 is like less than 1%, right? Less than 1%. So this is what we breathe in, right? So in the alveoli, in the gas filled side, you have high oxygen concentration and low CO2. But the blood coming to the lungs, so the alveoli has high CO2 and low oxygen. So what is going to happen? Diffusion, right? So there is a partial pressure gradient, which is what? In the terms of gas, it's a concentration gradient that is favoring the diffusion of gases. So a net diffusion, you have to highlight it. A net diffusion of oxygen takes off from air in the alveoli to the blood and from CO2 in the blood to alveoli. This equation you need to know how, what is our respiratory molecule or the respiratory compound we have is hemoglobin. How many oxygens one hemoglobin can carry? 4 oxygens. By a reversible reaction, it forms HbO8. It's reversible because why can one hemoglobin carry 4 oxygen? It has 4 what globin proteins having 4 heme groups. So it can carry 4 oxygen molecules. Simple things. When blood leaves the alveolar capillaries, the oxygen and carbon dioxide partial pressures are in equilibrium, right? So the concentrations will be equal when the blood is going out of the lungs. But when they go to the tissues, their oxygen concentration is low, CO2 concentration is high. So from the blood to the tissues, oxygen is going to come. From the tissues to the blood, CO2 is going to come. So these are called respectively oxygen unloading and loading of carbon dioxide. Okay. Any questions? You don't need to memorize these partial pressure values as it's mentioned in the resource book. No need to memorize those partial pressure values. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Then let's quickly go through the homework I gave you. Right. That was previous week. Right. I hope the new students also at home you can write this. Let's quickly go through the essay, coronary circulation and the consequence of blockage of coronary arteries. Right. So this week for homework, you can do this. Describe the mechanism of ventilation. You can do this essay. Only part A, we didn't do hemostatic control of breathing. So coming to the homework, that is the consequence of blockage of coronary arteries. Let's make a nice marking scheme. All right. Before that, we need to do explain a little bit because the question was, the new students, you can write down, the question was, explain the coronary circulation. Explain the coronary, briefly describe, or you can say briefly describe the coronary circulation and the consequences of blockage of coronary arteries. Consequence of blockage of coronary arteries. Okay. So first you have to do what? You have to describe the coronary circulation. Few points there, right? Heart is supplied with arterial blood by left and right coronary arteries. 2 points, which branch from the aorta, 1 mark, immediately distal to the aortic valve. What do you mean distal? Like after, right? After the aortic valve. Okay. Immediately distal to the aortic. Okay. Let's see how many points we can come up. Then let's go to the other essay. Okay. Coronary arteries travel the heart wall, eventually forming a vast network of capillaries, right? Vast network of capillaries. That idea need to be there, 1 mark. Then that is the arterial supply, right? Arterial supply. Then talking about the venous drainage, how the venous blood is coming from the heart. Venous blood is collected into a number of cardiac veins, joined to form the coronary sinus. Very, very important term, coronary sinus. Opens to the right atrium, 1 mark. Remainder passes directly into the heart chamber through little venous channels. Okay. Next section of the essay, the consequence of blockage of coronary arteries. So you only have to talk about coronary arteries. Okay. So what is atherosclerosis? The inner lining of the artery, 1 point, inner lining of the arteries can be thickened and hardened, 1 mark, due to the condition called atherosclerosis, which occurs as due to the deposition of fatty substances, especially cholesterol. This can affect normal blood supply, no only mark for that. One or more branches of coronary arteries can be blocked due to atherosclerosis. Blocked is the word, which can be complicated by a thrombus, blood clot. Depending on the place and the block, the degree and the block related part of the heart muscle will be deprived of what? Oxygen and nutrients, 3 months. So this causes a special type of pain due to the lack of oxygen that we call as ischemic pain, that we feel as a chest pain called angina, 1 mark. And also narrowing of arteries. So you get a chest pain when you have what? The arteries are only now narrowed, but have they completely blocked? No, they are not completely blocked yet, right? So you get a chest pain when they are narrowed, but complete block, right? Complete occlusion, 1 mark. One or more coronary arteries lead to a heart attack, myocardial infarction. Myocardial infarction is death. It is death, right? Damage or death of cardiac muscle tissue. Actually, myoinfarction is a dead area due to lack of adequate oxygen and nutrients. Heart rhythm may be abnormal. Heart may cease to be an effective pump. Okay. Other vital organs such as the brain may be deprived, brain, 1 mark, adequate oxygen, and that's it. Right? How many points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. 28 out of 50 here. Let's see what was the other part. I couldn't, yes. Part A, sorry, yes, part A was actually describe the structure of the heart wall, no? Right, that answer is here. That answer is here. So, talking about the human heart wall, okay? Not the entire heart, just the heart wall. What do you have to talk about? You can briefly say it's a cone-shaped hollow muscular organ. I'll give 1 mark for the introduction. 3 layers, 1 mark. What are the 3 layers? 1 mark each: pericardium, myocardium, endocardium. Then pericardium is the outermost layer, 1 mark. It has 2 sacs, 1 mark. The fibrous pericardium, serous pericardium. They have explained these. Okay. I have explained this. All right. There's an outer fibrous one. That is the fibrous pericardium. This is very similar to what? What we learned today. The two layers of pericardium is very similar to what we learned today. About the lungs. Really? So, like, this is the serous pericardium is like the skin of the heart. So it's like the visceral pleura. It's like, I mean, not what mean is like it's similar in sort of how it's structured. Serous pericardium is like the skin of the heart. It is stuck to the surface. And the fibrous pericardium is like what? Parietal pleura. Right? So the outer layers of the heart and the lungs are kind of similar. Myocardium is the middle layer one mark, composed of cardiac muscle running through the myocardium, a network of specialized conducting fibers, two marks, responsible for transmitting heart's electrical signals. Inner layer is the endocardium, one mark, lines the chambers. Lines is a keyword. Chambers and valves of the heart. It's a smooth membrane, one mark, consists of flattened epithelial cells, one mark, continues with the endothelium of the blood vessels. Count how many marks. I think 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, so 28 plus, let's say, 19. So how many? About 48, no? 47. So if we have got 47 out of 47, then it will be what, 150 out of 150, right? No doubt. So in the level paper, there could be some additional points, but these are the points that I see as worth giving marks. You don't need to draw the heart to draw. If they ask the structure of the wall of the heart, you don't need to draw. Right? No use. Yeah, understood. So with that, I think that is enough for today. I had this as a free session. Right. Next week I'll tell you what the plan is. Right. Next week I'll tell you what the plan is, and I'll be putting the recording of this as a free recording into the group, right? So you can share among your friends. If they are looking for I mean, you can see I try to be clear. At the same time, I need to cover the syllabus, right? At the same time, I try to do questions. Today, I couldn't do much because from these earlier sections, there's not much questions, but you need to have the understanding, right? So next week, we are going to do a lot more questions. And so that's how the class is done, right? Because we are going a bit fast and because we are doing online, there's no need to do a very long class, right? So we can cover a lot of content and then it saves time, right? So it saves your time most importantly. So no need, yeah. So any other questions, new students that you need to clarify? Share, I'll send the recording, share the recording. So if your friends are willing to join, they can watch the recording and see if it's there to their liking. And then they can contact my team and they will sort of coordinate everything. And so if you're continuing, please enroll to the website, the Gurutaru online platform. So through that, you will be able to do all the payments and the deliveries, everything. I won't be handling those things, right? So yeah, Saturday at 8 p.m. Yeah, this is our usual time. Because in the morning I have to go to the hospital and then I have to study a little bit as well. So Saturday evening is doing at home is so very convenient. And you can just join the class and then for another hour. So today we are finishing at so around 10:30 I usually finish, right? So about for another hour, you can revise what you learned today, and then you can go to sleep around 12:30 or 1, right? From the luxury of your home. Any other question? Okay. If that's all, then let's finish for today. So thank you for joining. Yeah, thank you for joining. Then good night. Keep studying. Okay. Good night. Bye. Okay.